All righty. So, welcome to Bungalows for Bachelors number 2. Today we're going to get into the topic of architectural design. This is the first step towards getting a house planned out to get built. If you don't have a design, you don't really have anywhere to go. So, I am going to share my screen into a presentation to show you guys, and we're going to start moving through it. Give me just a second. All right. So, the phase one of this whole process is the design planning stage, and this is the architectural design portion of that phase. So the first thing we need to ask ourselves is, what is an architectural plan? So this is an architectural plan. What you're seeing is the title sheet. This is the first sheet. It's going to have usually a title, information of where it's going. This is a house that I designed in the past for somebody downtown San Antonio. You're going to have things like basic copyright information, some notes over here on the left-hand side from the code, just kind of stuff that kind of covers you as an architect designer guy. And then usually a picture in the center of what's kind of getting built. A sheet index over here, which just tells you the sheets that are in this plan set. Logo, things like that. In the bottom right, sometimes there'll be it could be anywhere on the sheet, but the summary of square footages for the building. These things are often used for bidding purposes for contractors. Some people bid based on average square footages. So they will see that, for example, the foundation guy has to do 1,872 square feet of covered. He's going to give some dollar per square foot bid on that price, and that's going to cover him. He's going to know he's good there. Something like that. So that's why that's on there. The next sheet is usually the site plan. This is going to show the property boundary, some information from the survey, the setback lines that are offsets from the property boundary that show where you're allowed to build inside. There's going to be sometimes easement information on here that is also stuff that you're not allowed to build in. Um, there's going to be basic driveway plans, some sidewalk information, where the house is going to go. In this case, the house did not fit inside the setback. The client chose to keep the house that size and try to get a variance from the city because they didn't want to make the house any smaller. So that's the site plan. It's going to have the basic plan for the site, what's going where, and that kind of thing. On the right hand of all of these sheets is the title block. That's just going to show the basic project information, sheet name, that kind of stuff. Next sheet is usually a floor plan. This is going to have a majority of the information regarding how to frame the house, how to build the foundation. It's going to have all the dimensions of the exterior, where everything's going to go. It's going to have details on what to do with beams, things like that. There's some glitchy stuff going on in this, so ignore that. It's going to have ceiling heights in here. That's going to describe the heights of the walls. It's going to describe types of walls. Like this is a 2x6 wall. This wall, we're going to want a mirror here. This is a 2x4 and then a 2x6 wall to make room for this bathtub. So it's describing a whole bunch of, door sizes, 2 foot 8 wide, 8 foot 0 inches tall. It's going to describe window sizes, general information about how this house is to be built from a floor plan view. This is the first floor. This is the second floor. So that kind of stuff is going to go there. There's always going to be a scale bar or something up here. Again, there's glitchy stuff happening here, but some general notes on hose bibs and, stuff that just should apply to the whole plan. That's the floor plan sheet. There's going to be an elevations sheet, which shows the outside of the house from the 4 orthogonal directions. Sometimes there's going to be more than just these views to show detail if needed. This is going to have all kinds of information. Now, this information can be spread out in different places on the plan. Everybody does it differently, but this is where I like to put my stuff. If there's special plate heights, I'm going to call them out here. The plate height is describing how tall the wall should be framed before the roof is set on the wall. These are roof pitches here. All roof pitches are noted in a something 12, which means for 12 inches over, you're going to go some amount of inches up. That's just the way residential roof pitches are described. This is 10-12. It's a steeper pitch. This is 3-12. It's a shallower pitch. So it's got Harding hardy board siding notes in here telling you what kind of siding to use, size of trim on the windows, size of trim on the door, some roof material description here. So basic information on what's going to be seen from the outside of the house. Same thing, roof descriptions here. It's a pretty repetitive house. There's not a lot of detail here going on, but that's going to be on the elevation sheet. It's going to give someone a view of what this house is supposed to look like from the outside. And then we have a roof and detail sheet. The farther into the plan you get, the more it'll vary between architects or drafters. I put these things on the sheet because it just makes sense to me. The roof plan is going to describe a top-down view of the building outline and then the roof outline. So from the top down, this dashed line is the roof. It's like the building framed dimension edge, foundation edge, if you will. And then the solid line is the actual edge of the roof. So in this case, there's a 16-inch overhang. The roof will project 16 inches out past the house here. And it varies depending on where you are at. There's a roof pitch confirmation here telling you which way the water's flowing. So you can see that from here. These, for example, only have a 6-inch overhang on those pieces. So there it says 6-inch overhang. So there's, not everything is always labeled, but there's some interpretation required in this kind of thing. This note here about venting. Attics, when they're vented, need to be vented properly in the proper amounts. So this math here just confirms that if they install a particular vented hardy soffit panel on the roof eave, it's going to allow enough air in the bottom, and there's going to be a certain number of turbines or vented ridge at the top that's going to allow proper airflow ratios and stuff. So the attic vents properly per code. That's the roof plan. There's going to be a whole bunch of section details and things like that. For example, here's a stairway section where I'm proving the rise and run of the stairways within code. There's a headroom clearance here to make sure that nobody's going to hit their head. Code minimum is 6'8", for example. And they had to lose some space in their master bedroom to gain this. So this is important things to note when they're framing and building. There's going to be details on cabinetry, where they want outlets and light switches and stuff like that. This is going to specify some kitchen stuff. Overall, this is just a good detail sheet to show what specific things about this house are going to look a certain way. And the last sheet in the sheet set of the basic plan set is going to be the electrical plan. The job of the electrical plan is to tell the electricians how many fixtures, how many receptacles, how many things like that are going to be in this house so they can bid properly. This does not describe the way the wires are actually ran physically. It only shows the concept. For example, in this front switch, this is a little S for switch. The first switch in the set is going to control this little canned light in this entry area. The second switch is going to control a porch sconce light here, and there's going to be 2 overhead lights on the porch area. So that's what those are describing. And the 3 means a 3-way switch. So there's stuff in here. WP is a waterproof outlet outside the house. So the electrical plan is just going to describe where the fans, lights, things like that are controlled. Anything special like that. An outlet with little 3 dashes here, that means a 220-volt outlet instead of a standard outlet. This is for powering the dryer. So it's going to describe all of those things. Sometimes there's notes added, like here I noted that there's going to be a compressor here. So the electrician needs to run special 220 cable out to this area as well. And sometimes over here, there's an attic door that's going to be here. So they need to know there's going to be a light and a switch for the attic here as well. That's not shown on the plan. So those are electrical plans. That's sort of what they do and what they mean. But that is the overall construction architectural plan set. There is nothing in here about what size of wood to use, what size of beams need to go where. This is not an engineering drawing set. This is something that will tell somebody, for the most part, what is to be built here. There's a lot of estimates that can be drawn off of this to get an idea of building the house, but it is not a complete set in terms of building. You will need engineering for the foundation, the framing, the wall bracing sometimes to prove that wind's not going to knock it over. But this is the architectural piece. This is the pretty part. This is what the product is supposed to look like when we're done. This is not a full plan necessarily for building or estimating. So that is that. We will go back to the PowerPoint. So what is an architect? Well, an architect is the specific name for the one drawing and creating these plans. It implies that you have a 4-year education, that you got 4 years of experience, and you got a license. You took a test. Just like in engineering, there's an architectural license. And that basically qualifies you to You can draw for commercial plans, not just houses. You can draw for all kinds of stuff because it formalizes that you know a lot of rules. But basically, an architect is going to have a really solid grasp of drafting. They're going to be able to clearly draw using the software that exists these days. They're going to have a understanding of engineering principles. They're going to know from experience and from their education that sometimes when you're designing a house, you need to have an idea of what the engineers are going to say, because you sometimes just don't want to design silly things into a house. So a good architect is going to have a grasp of engineering. They're going to know how to solve problems before the problems exist and it goes to engineering. They're going to know a little bit about surveying so that they can understand site plans a little better and know how to work with a surveyor to get the information out of a survey and develop a site plan and stuff like that. They're going to have some background in building science, which is going to help them draw details for the construction, where someone has a special part of the house that needs like a special waterproofing detail, or they need a special insulation detail or something. And they're going to be able to draw very specific things because they understand uh, air intrusion, water intrusion, heat loss, all kinds of stuff that's related to really high quality house construction. And of course, trades. They're going to have an understanding of what the kind of work is that people have to do to build something. So that's going to help the design, and that they're hopefully things are not going to be built so crazy, or there's not going to be a toilet in an upper floor above something silly in a bottom floor, and you end up with a weird looking soffit or something that has to be added in so that a pipe can be hidden. So if they understand the trades, that's going to help out as well. And of course, they're in the education. They're going to get a lot of education on architectural history. That's going to be the artsy stuff that's going to sort of explain, well, this era had this and this era had that. So there's going to be a little more artistic taste developed there. And they're also going to be very familiar with what is sort of popular in new buildings these days. What do the people with all the money building custom homes want in their homes? They're going to be very familiar with all those things so that they can sort of have a big picture understanding. An architect is usually paid. They're usually expensive, more expensive than a draftsman. But it's because they're going to be more capable of producing something that's going to be high quality. What is my screen showing right now? Having issues with the PowerPoint potentially.
So earlier when you were describing the different pages, it was just stuck on the cover page.
Oh, that's awful. I probably didn't switch the screen share. Okay.
Well, you can edit
All
it
right.
later.
I can do that. Yes, I might have to do some post edit. Okay. Alrighty. So continuing on here, what is a draftsman? A draftsman is essentially somebody who can also produce house plans, but they didn't go to school for it necessarily. They didn't go to learn all of these high level thinking sort of strategies. A draftsman is someone who learned how to draw. They learned how houses are built. They usually have experience in the trades. They're able to put pictures together and solve a lot of problems from their experience. Usually they have some mild education that like teaches them how to use software and stuff like that to draw, because nobody draws on paper anymore. But the basic premise is a draftsman is going to be able to produce a plan set just like an architect, but with a much lower price tag because there's not licensure, there's not the same insurance involved. It's a smaller scale endeavor, but there you can get the same quality of plan from a draftsman. They're just two different levels of a project. So, what tools do draftsmen and architects use? Well, they use these days, architects at least, some draftsmen as well, are going to use building information modeling software. That's what BIM stands for. And basically it means a house is going to be developed in a 3D model before a plan is produced. So in the old days, people had a theory for a house, they had something they wanted built, so they would just start talking about it, they'd start sketching, they'd start drawing the house itself on paper, and they draw floor plans, they draw things like that, some elevations. Nowadays, you want to have some idea of what to start with, but the plans aren't the first thing that's sort of produced here. You're going to produce a model, and the modern software allows you to walk through that model do all kinds of cool stuff in that model, and make sure the model is basically what the customer wants. And then the plans are going to be basically spit out at the end of that and labeled. It's sort of like the end of the process when the plans are actually produced. That's how it works these days. So Autodesk Revit is a powerful program that can do the 3D modeling thing. Chief Architect is a powerful program. There are more out there, but these are just two big names. And then drafting software is a little simpler. Autodesk AutoCAD is basically a 2D. You draw lines, you can draw details, you can add text, you can draw more stuff. It's basically like pen and paper, but it's in a computer. So that's its purpose. It's for refining, drawing special things that aren't really easy to draw or notate in the other softwares. So first we're going to take a jump into the Chief Architect software so I can show you. And this time I'm going to make sure the screen share works. So first I'm going to stop it. I'm waiting for that plan to load up, and I'm going to jump back. Plan has loaded up. We're going to go into the screen share real quick here. All right. So this is what the inside of Chief Architect looks like. For example, this is a simpler version of, it's not Chief Architect Premier like the top version, but it is a similar version. This is the same screen you're going to see. You can zoom in. All of these objects are live objects in the software. You work mostly in a floor plan view, but you can do all kinds of stuff. This is the first floor. If I go up to the second floor, I see the same sort of thing. But basically, while you're creating in here, it's kind of like The Sims in that it is creating the 3D model while you are making it. So if I go and I look outside the house at a perspective view, it's going to show me the model of the house as it exists. And I don't care about missing files here. So it's going to show me the house that exists, and you are going to be able to see everything scaled pretty accurately. It's not going to have a flawless rendering. It's designed for sort of quick viewing, make sure things make sense. But this is the thing that is basically going to be looked at and analyzed to print out what the plans are supposed to look like. So this is the model from the outside, and you can also do things to walk around inside the house. So if I go to this front entry door here and drop a camera in here, I can walk around inside the house too. So I can see some of the things are accurate, some of the things are not accurate. It's just kind of issues with the software as you kind of work through it. But it's going to give you a pretty decent idea for what to expect in the feel of the house and the flow of the house as you walk through it. So that is the capability of the software. It's extremely useful when you're trying to help a client figure out, well, what do I want to see? A lot of times custom home builders aren't going to, the homeowner's not going to be able to visualize this kind of thing until they basically have the house built. And then it's like, well, I didn't like how that feels. So here's an example of the ceiling. It's dropping down right there. That was notated on the plan. This is that master bedroom. This is what the ceiling is doing. So there's some sort of glitchy stuff that exists in here, but no software is perfect. So this is the basic premise. You can go around and do things, and this is what this software does. And so you take this software and you export this model onto sheets of paper, basically label a bunch of stuff with text. And that's what it's like to work in a software like this. So the other software, oops, we'll share again. So the other software, Autodesk AutoCAD, is going to be much more of a 2D orientation. I will show you what the site plan looked like in AutoCAD. Let me share the screen. to here. So this is what the paper kind of looks like in the computer. You use viewports and all kinds of fancy stuff to draw and do stuff on the sheet of paper. And what it's really doing is it's looking at this model space here where all these lines and stuff exists. And you basically look at what you want to see on paper, make sure it's to scale and print it out. This is what the site plan looked like with the objects, with the lines. You see, you can grab something. And if I want, I can move it over here. You know, it's just a software that allows you to draw and do text and do things. This is the raw line work, text and stuff that came from the surveyor. So this information was copy pasted, cleaned up, a bunch of stuff deleted, relabeled with the correct style for my plan, and that's how a site plan can be created. Is comes from this kind of information. But this is what AutoCAD looks like. It's very simple, very 2D. Draw squares, rectangles, lines, arcs, you name it. It's pretty basic. So those are some of the programs. That's what they look inside. That's what they look like inside. What are the programs that are available to other people? Well, there's lots of people out there who have developed very similar, some are 3D, some are 2D tools that are free online. You don't even have to download anything. You just start drawing walls and it'll start making a house for you. They are very useful for visualization. They are not tools that should be used to likely spit out a construction document that people are going to be building with, because it's not intended necessarily for that purpose. It can be done, but it is a good idea for somebody with very powerful software that's going to have a lot more idea of the details and nuances that are going to cause problems to have gone through something like this to make a plan. But these are some of the tools that exist: Planner 5D, Home by Me, Home Styler, SketchUp, Floor Planner, Smart Draw, Room Styler, 3D Home Planner. Those are some of the free ones, with, I'm sure, upgraded versions available. But most people can just start diddling around, and it's the different softwares are going to have different capabilities. The more expensive software you buy, the more capability you're going to have to see cooler things and to control more things and to print out nicer plans. So if you want to learn more about architects and architecture in general, then some things you could do would be to read the book Building a New House by 2 licensed architects. It's a pretty short book, but it covers the basic differences between what people normally think an architect is and what an architect actually does. If you want, you can glance through chapter 3 of the 2021 International Residential Code. Chapter 3 is the planning chapter that basically summarizes a lot of rules about designing a house. It's got sort of like engineering stuff in there, but it also has stuff like, well, okay, if you're going to make a stairwell, then your rise and run have to be a certain ratio. You can't have stairs that are too steep. You don't want stairs that are too long, so people fall down a long ways. There's general rules in there. You don't want a room that's too small. You don't want a hallway that's too narrow. So that's got a lot of basic rules in there that are just kind of good things to know in general. You can watch the Essential Craftsman YouTube video called House Plan Revealed and Working with a Draftsman. He talks in there about his specific spec house build and how he worked with the draftsman and what to expect. He goes into some good detail there. And of course, you can always pick out one of those free design software programs and use a free trial of something and just start poking around in things and playing with software to get an idea of what people are doing when they're working with the software. It's quite complicated, but it's always a good idea to get your hands on something. So that concludes that. And if there are any questions, they can be asked, but otherwise that is the end of the class. So thank you for your time.